Welcome to In Focus. I'm your host, Yesenia Taveras. For years now, law enforcement officials and community leaders have stressed the need for engagement between the police and the public. Joining us now is Frank Burton Jr., who is giving the public a voice. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us. I think this is something very needed in our community that you're doing. But before we get into the actual forums, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I am originally from Chester, Pennsylvania, but grew up in Wilmington. I am a author, an ex-teacher, a coach, retired special agent with the FBI, and just a motivator.
Okay. And can you tell us a little bit about the author side from being a retired FBI agent to now being an author?
Yeah, when I retired from the FBI, every law enforcement officer wants to write a book. So my desire was similar. Initially, I didn't want to do, but then I figured I had something special. Being a pastor and an FBI agent and doing both at the same time for a number of years, over 12 years at the same time, I figured I had something a little bit different to offer the community. So I wrote a book called From FBI Agent to an Apostle, Saga of a Spiritual Sniper.
And now, not so many, I should say, law enforcement officials go beyond the badge in regards to being heavily involved into the community after they retired. So can you talk a little bit about your initiative in regards to engaging the community with this law enforcement community forum and what sparked that interest for you?
What sparked the interest is my love and my passion for the community from which I come from and live in. Communities like it, Wilmington, all over the country in which I've worked. But also from the law enforcement side as well. So the passion was sparked because I wanted to be proactive in initiating a dialogue between the community and law enforcement officers, because when we get down to the bare bones minimum, we're all saying the same thing, but we need to be on the same page.
And now, what was the first community forum like? What was expected, or what were you able to gain from that?
The first forum was sparked again out of my passion, and it really wasn't well coordinated. I just came up and had a thought about this and gathered a few officers together and had the community there. And it went really well. The dialogue went well, but we wanted to do more. We wanted to interact with the community more. We wanted to have some scenarios. We wanted to have discuss some initiatives that the law enforcement officers were willing to do as well, but we wanted the public to be more involved as well. So this time it's going to be bigger, it's going to be better.
Yeah, I was going to say, let's dig into that a little bit. So we have one coming up on Wednesday, August 22nd.
Yes.
And I want to let everyone know that it's not just the Wilmington Police Department, it's also the state of Delaware's Police Department, Newcastle County, and you're going to have Mayor Mike Brzezicki there as well. So how important is it to have all those three different departments, police departments together, as well as the mayor, to tackle these issues?
It's very important and it's strategic, because what the goal is for us to be able to not only touch Newcastle County, but Kent County and Sussex County, to be proactive in having this dialogue between law enforcement and community, but also that it's not just a one-time, a two-time conversation, to be able to take this initiative tri-state and all across the country.
How do you try to tackle the people who live here in Wilmington and actually kind of like scared to even be around the police for the fear of being called a snitch or trying to give them too much information? I don't want to be associated with you. I don't want no one on the streets to see me with you. So how do you tackle that fear and actually try to bring the people into these forums?
Right. The same way you would do it in any other kind of venue is building rapport. And if you build a rapport, whether you're a pastor, whether you're a law enforcement officer, whether you work for the city, the county, or federal government, and even in the book, I discuss a few cases that I had like that. I understand, because I'm from the city. I understand what the no snitching rule is. But if you build a rapport with people and you are somebody that they can trust and you gain their trust, then you're able to break through those barriers and then you're able to, like I said before, we're all saying the same thing. Mm-hmm. I'm just like those guys out in the street. I was those guys. But also as law enforcement, I come home, I'm a dad, I'm a father. I'm not FBI agent was what I did. It's not who I was. Mm-hmm. So we break down those barriers by building rapport.
And what are some of the needs that you are hearing? So for example, I know one of the topics is going to be a Q&A, and mm-hmm. based on already having one forum, what are some of the things, the topics that you're trying to tackle in these forums?
Just the ability, it's a wide array and a wide range, but just the ability to just listen. to be able to everybody to come to the table and to be able to air out concerns.
Okay.
It could be concerns about police brutality. It could be concerned about disrespect from the community, from the law enforcement officer sides of view. But if we're willing to listen, active listening skills is something that I use as a hostage negotiator, where I could bring down a level of just anxiety to whomever I was talking to. If we can come together and sit at the table and have a conversation and really listen to each other about our concerns, then that's what we're going to do. That's the main focus.
And I do want to touch on that, being that you're a retired FBI agent and you're bringing everyone together to sit at the table. What are some of the skill sets or some of the things that you've been trained with in that profession that you've been able to bring over to the community side?
Well, some of the skill sets are, like I said before, the active listening skills are the biggest. As the hostage negotiator was totally different responsibility than being an FBI agent. As an FBI agent, as a law enforcement officer, you go in, you interrogate, you tell people what to do, and you're not going to do this. But as a negotiator, I have to be able to listen. Mm-hmm. Because if I go in there with that same attitude, it could be somebody holding a gun to somebody's head, and I say the wrong thing and somebody gets killed. But if I can listen to you about your concerns, about your aggravation, well, Yesenia, you sound very aggravated. Well, I'm not aggravated. I didn't say I was aggravated. Well, I could back off of that. I didn't say you were aggravated. I said you sounded aggravated. Mm-hmm. So if I can effectively listen to someone about their concerns, then I know that my voice, not my gun, not my badge, not my taser, my voice is my number one weapon, as it is in the community as well.
And Frank, do you feel like this is actually a benefit to the community? Some may look at this like, oh, you're just wasting your time because there's just too much happening in Wilmington. You're not going to be able to tackle all the different districts here. So why start with this forum?
Right. Great point. So you got to blow past the naysayers. If what you have is passion, if what you have is proven and this is what you've done, then you continue to move on in spite of the naysayers, because there are some who will listen. And those who will listen will take it out and take it into the community and do what it was accomplished to do. I just came back from Compton over in California. Mm-hmm. And some of the worst areas in the United States, that's where I go to, where people say this kind of thing can't happen, right. This kind of thing can't work, but it's been proven it does work.
And as we've seen, it's very powerful. You're having all the different departments here in Delaware of the police departments coming together as one voice. Yes. That's very unusual in different states. You don't see all the different departments come together, but here, I'm only thinking about New York and all the different boroughs, but here in Delaware you have the state, Newcastle County, and Wilmington Police Department, and that imagery right there alone is very powerful. So is there anything that you would like to touch in regards to making sure that you do represent every single department? Yeah,
that image right there goes back to what I said before. It goes back to rapport. And there with Vaughn Bond, Newcastle County Police is a great friend of many, many years. Anthony Easterling, which will probably come on in the next segment, I've known him for 36, 37 years. Rich Armour there, Wilmington Police Department, great friend for over 30-something years. Paul Chapman, retired state police officer, I've known him since high school. Captain Sapp, I just met him for Delaware State Police, but Nate McQueen is a good friend of many years. And there, right there, Jeffrey Covington is one of my co-workers with the FBI. He's retired since, and Brother Andrew right there is a part of our church. So just to be able to have the rapport to say, listen, this is what I'm passionate about. This is what we want to seek to accomplish. Can you guys come in and all of them willingly, not even a question, all of them willingly. And I think it's definitely a great time to do this, because as we all know, we did have the police officer who was at Wawa and ended up getting shot by a person who lives here in the community. So that in itself made national news, and it's kind of like, wow, we used to be able to live here in Delaware and not have to think about these things. Yes. You might have your small crimes here and there, but now a police officer getting shot, it's kind of like changed the whole momentum here in regards to crime. It's looked at in both ways, because you also have people complaining about police brutality. So tackling those different issues and just trying to bring law enforcement officials and people who live in the community that they're here to protect and serve and bring them all together, I think this is the perfect time for that.
Do you agree?
I do agree with Trooper Ballard. That was a wake-up call for us, because we see that kind of thing in the news and media, but now that hits home. So we talk about those instances and we talk about those subjects in those officers, but also the forum is, what about the incident that just happened up in Massachusetts last week with a young black female who was an RA, and somebody called the campus security on her because she was just laying around on campus. The goal here is to have that conversation. What do we train about? We train for everything else. We train for incidences in concerts, in post offices, in all other areas. Why not train for this? What do you do if somebody comes up to you, and maybe it's a campus officer, and they're not speaking to you in a relatively nice term, and it's kind of intimidating? Your voice can change that whole situation. What you say can change that whole situation. So again, the emphasis, we train on everything else. Let's be aware, and let's train on all these incidences, because I don't want to see another critical incident happen where there's a loss of life or an embarrassment. Let's talk about it now while everybody's calm, and nobody's losing their temper, to be able to deal with those things.
And that leads me to my next question in regards to community outreach initiatives. Do you have anything else that you're doing in regards to, like you said, the training or the other things that you're doing to try to help the community understand the value in your mindset?
Yes, with the community outreach initiatives, with the Newcastle County Police, the State Police, and the Wilmington Police Department, as recently as yesterday, they're all over. They're going out to the community and just engaging, showing the community what they do. They bring out the police dogs. Cops are playing basketball with each other. So that's very important.
Yes.
Because that little boy or little girl who is inundated with cops are bad now sees you from a different aspect. So that's it. For myself, I go out and for the community, I've gone all across the country teaching active shooter. I go out and I teach church security training, and it's a whole different aspect, because some people, we don't need security in church, but you'd be surprised the numbers of incidences. So the outreach is where these officers are offering their services to come to your churches, to come to your community centers afterwards and just engage. Bring out the horses, bring out the helicopter, bring out the dogs, and that changes the perspective of the community, instead of just seeing officers when bad things happen. And
that's a good point, because you don't want it to become just an event thing. So like, Glasgow Park, they usually have an event where a lot of police officers and firefighters come out. You'll have the same thing at the Wilmington Police Athletic League. So it's kind of like, you don't want it to be where these organizations or these parks are the only time you see police officers in that light.
Yes.
I know sometimes when we drive by my son's school, there's like 4 police officers, Newcastle County, on a horse in the summertime. And so it's a beautiful sight to see. Like, the kids can come out the car, they can talk to the police officers, they can engage with them, they can touch the horse. Like, that in itself is a different experience. And I think sometimes at a young age, especially for minorities, there's a fear that's built in right away. If it's getting pulled over for anything, your light's not working in the back, or a traffic stop violation, it's like already like, my heart's pounding, what's going to happen? And now, especially with all these shootings that's been going on with the police departments. So the fact that you're trying to change the perspective and the mindset for community residents, to show them like, no, this is not what all police officers are all about.
Absolutely.
They're here to protect you, and there's certain things that comes with that. And now you get to see them in a different light, because we don't get to see them as off-duty officers, you know?
Right. That's
and that could change the perspective in itself as well. You see them in some jeans and a t-shirt and you sit with them, that changes the whole energy of the room.
That's it, and that's a great point, because I don't wear this suit all the time. I wear shorts and a hat and a t-shirt, and that's the whole goal, is to change the perspective and alleviate the anxiety. Now that I'm coming in contact with a law enforcement officer, well, in the meantime, community engagement. We always talk about the officers going out and getting out of their cars and engaging with the community. How about the community? You see an officer in your car, it's 100 degrees in his car, it's 100 degrees outside. How about going to officer, you want something to drink? Here's a bottle of water. Here's XYZ. So now what happens in this forum, what happened as a result of the first one, afterwards, people stay for like an hour and a half or 2 hours just to engage. Cards were given out. Offers were made to come down to the stations and do police citizens academy. So now I not only have a face, but now have a name. Like, exactly. So now I have a name. So guess what? Oh, I make Officer Easterling or Officer Amar, and now have his card. So guess what? If something happens, I can call them up. Or I met the police chief. I can call him up, and they will answer. They will answer.
And that's a great thing, because you get to learn who these police officers are on a personal level.
Yes.
And then soon we'll be able to talk to Master Corporal Anthony Easterling, who we were able to see. He really knows these people.
He does.
And that to me was a different light. Like, we did a ride along, sat in the back of the seat, and we actually got out, and he showed us how he engages with them. And I think, to your point, that's the part that we need in our community. Seeing the officers on the bikes, you know, on their biking, like not motorcycles, on their bikes, in the community, riding around, it just gives a different feel.
That's the rapport part, again, that I can't emphasize enough, that Anthony does. See, Anthony, because of his rapport and his buy-in, can get into places where other officers can't. Because he's invested the time, because he's taken the time to spend times with people when they were in trouble, to just sit down and have that conversation. Now that they're out of the woods, now they can walk him into places where other officers can't walk into.
Right.
And so he's able to do a lot more. So that rapport is huge.
I was going to say, that's a good point that you brought up, because a lot of the police officers that we've seen are like your veterans and your retired police officers.
Yes.
So that's good. Now, is there anything that you do at the forum that you try to encourage those who might want to think about joining the law as a police officer? Yes.
At the very end, it's very important to have the officers and whoever, the guests there, speak to those. So then they can create an invitation to come to Citizens Academy if by chance any of the people want to become or interested in becoming law enforcement officers. But I think the main goal is for the community, especially the young kids, to look at us and go, wow, that guy grew up where I grew up. That guy did what I did, and he ended up working for the FBI. Oh, I used to see him on television. I saw him in magazines. Same community, same opportunity.
That's right.
Now we encourage you to do the same.
And are there any other ways that you're using your gifts and experiences to help our community?
Yes, and I mentioned it kind of before. I traveled the country teaching different forums, whether it be active shooting training. We do church security training. So you don't have to be a huge church. You could be a medium-sized church or a small church. Goes back to that whole question of, well, should you have security? Well, until something happens, then you're going to want security. Exactly. So again, it's about training and it's about awareness. So I try to go around using the gifts and the talents that God gave me to be able to help and assist our community.
And Frank, it just touches on that quote, that proverb. Like, I feel like I have an old soul, because I'm really a believer of, it takes a village to raise a child.
Absolutely.
It truly does. And everything that I'm hearing from you reminds me of that.
Absolutely.
You know, I used to be that kid that can get on a bike and go ride around my development and not have to worry about anything, or go shoot basketball for a little bit at the park and not have to worry about anything. Where nowadays it's kind of like, hold up, wait a second, where am I at? What development am I in?
Yes.
You can't play until the street lights turn off anymore.
That's
so
right.
This here, bringing everyone together and letting them know, listen, we're giving you a platform. You can be serious with your questions. The police officers are here. It's not you're going to get slighted or anything like that. You can be as real as possible.
Yes.
And that's needed, because in order for the community to come up from where it's going, like you're doing, you have to give back.
Yes.
And as a retired FBI agent, you're doing that. How important is that? Some people at this age don't even think about volunteering anymore, but that, I feel, is what makes a difference within our community. Right. You have to give back to your community. You have to step away from your 9-to-5 job, and you have to find other ways to contribute to society, so that way you're helping everyone, because not everyone has the same resources and benefits or knowledge that you've come up with.
Right.
So how important is that to have the community involvement and giving back?
It's very important, because what it does, just like the quote that you just mentioned, it creates a ripple effect. And I'm an avid believer that your passion is important to your purpose. So that ripple effect says that if I can and we can as a community get together, and law enforcement have that dialogue amongst each other, understanding that all of us are saying the same thing, the ripple effect is, well, we don't even speak to our neighbors. Like when I grew up in Wilmington, the whole community knew each other, whether it be blocks upon blocks. Now neighbors don't even speak to each other. But at this forum, oh, they asked that question. I had the same question. So now neighbors are starting to engage with each other.
Right.
Different communities are starting to engage with each other. And now blacks, white, Hispanics, whatever, Asians come to the table and say, wow, I have the same concerns. Let's talk. Let's come on a united front, and let's start to attack the problem.
That's right. And it's very important to build a relationship with the chief of police,
Yes.
Chief Tracy, and not to have that fear, because you and Chief Tracy have a real good relationship. And that to me took me back a little bit, because I'm like, wow, how many people can say that? Like, he just came to Wilmington, and just like that, you made it your business to make sure that you had a good relationship with him, because you know how important it is to incorporate his department within the community.
Right.
That's big.
So again, it goes to that passion. And Chief Tracy is probably the man that I know the least of those guys. I've known him maybe around 2 months, but because I'm passionate about my community and he's passionate, we share a similar passion. We connected on a forum back in April, and we've just connected, you know, every so often, just to keep in touch about our initiatives. But he always answers the phone. I'm always there when he calls, because we have the same goal, and that's about the rapport, and that's about the passion. Sometimes you just got to step out, whether you know somebody or not. If you're passionate about something, whether you know him or not, you just, well, I'm going to approach this man, and all he can do is say, I don't have time. But he may say, I do have time, which Tracy has, and he's been very crucial in our initiatives.
That's great, Frank. So let's go back to Wednesday, August 22nd. Where's this going to be at, your community forum?
It's going to be held at our church, 11 Parkway Circle in Newcastle, which is just south of the airport, Perfect Will Ministries.
Okay. And is there anything before we leave that you would like to add in regards to the forum, why people should come out and look forward to actually giving their input to the police officers?
I just believe, and I've said it earlier, is that we need to initiate a dialogue proactively, so we can understand that we are all speaking about the same thing. Come to the table. It hurts me when I think about how everybody gets together to talk about a problem after it happens. Mm-hmm. Let's train. Let's talk about it before. Let's be proactive. I don't want to see another incident where somebody dies. I don't want to see another embarrassing incident that happened up in Massachusetts. Let's talk about it beforehand. Let's engage with each other to make our community better.
And most importantly, Frank, be part of the solution, not the problem.
There it is. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for your time today. It was very insightful. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Yes,
I appreciate it.
And don't go away. More of how the police department here in Wilmington is engaging with the community when we return. Welcome back to In Focus. I'm your host, Yesenia Taveras, and today we are discussing the importance of community engagement between the police and the public. But what does that truly mean? What does it truly mean to engage with the public as a police officer? Joining us now is Master Corporal Anthony Easterling. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. And we also have Herb Cunningham, who is the Director of Security for Perfect Will Ministries. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you. This is great. We're going to be talking about how we work beyond the badge here and within the community. So let's start with Anthony. Anthony, could you share with us in regards to any initiatives that Police Chief has in regards to how the police officers here in Wilmington engages with the community?
Yes, Chief Robert Tracy, he's very much engaged into the community. As he's been a professional police officer for many years, well over. And he has come in contact with just about every community leader in the city and county, and every grassroots person that's in the city and county as well. And he wants us to interject the community policing concept back into the community where we feel that it was lost at certain points.
And how is that happening? Like, what does that look like?
It looks like getting out of the car.
That's right.
Okay, which I love to do, and walk around, engage people, come up to people, talk to them, extend your right hand of fellowship to a person. Right. Normally they would shake your hand, some of them won't, but then they'll explain to you why, and then you explain to them that, you know, this is not back in the day, this is right now. You know, so I'm going to engage with you. You know, it's the smile that has to come first when you approach a person. And that's what I've learned from childhood growing up in Baltimore to where I am today.
That's right. You brought all your
Engaged.
experiences from Baltimore to
Yes,
Wilmington.
yes.
But you're a resident of Wilmington.
Yes, I am a proud resident, city resident, for almost 30 years now.
I was going to say, because you're a vet too on the force.
Yes.
How many years have you put in with the Wilmington Police
I am
Department?
approaching 23 years at Wilmington
Wow,
Police.
that's wonderful. And so, how important it is to engage with the community? One thing I learned when we did a ride along with you, I was able
Yeah.
to sit in the back of the car, and one thing I said, I remember vividly opening up the door. I said, Master Corporal Anthony, how many people do you lock up a day in this back seat that I'm about to enter? And your response hit me so hard when you were like, "That's not our goal.
Right.
That's not our idea. That's
Right.
not what we do here." That really
No.
touched me. And then, as we did the ride along with you, I began to see how you truly know these residents. It's not about a fake conversation. You know their livelihoods, you know their children, you know where they work, you know their family, how many relatives have been locked up. Share a little bit about that with us.
Well, first of all, I come from a large family. I'm the youngest of 7. And growing up in Baltimore, my family extended to Wilmington, Delaware. So we were always taught to get to know people. That was a big concept with my mother. And she was, the village concept, it's old, but it still works.
It does.
It still works. You get to know the people you serve. And I've learned that from other officers from Wilmington Police, such as retired Chief Bobby Cummins,
Okay.
Chief Tracy, Captain Akil, Lieutenant Counts, Captain Wilfredo Campos, Lieutenant Andy Janvier, people of all different mixes and colors coming together and engaging themselves into the community.
Right.
Church members, grassroots members, Pastor Beeman, Pastor Bullock, they all come together. Pastor Frank, I knew Frank when he was in the FBI Academy.
Look at that.
Yeah, and we connected with each other because I was a Marine at Quantico, where he went to school at.
Okay.
So we would pass notes
So you have deep roots
to
there.
each other. Yes, yeah, deep roots.
But look where it carries over, where the community gets to benefit from that now.
Yes, yes.
That's
And when you're a police officer, you have to get out the car. You have to interject yourself with the community. And when people just want you to talk to them, you know, some of these kids will be on the corner when you ride by and they'll look at you, look away from you, spit on the ground or something. I used to take that personal. I would get out the car and ask them, you know, why did you do that?
Right.
Have I done anything to you? No, but your people did. Well, that's not me. So first I ask them their name, where they're from, and what's going on in their life. A lot of these kids out here don't have anybody to tell them, I love you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're a good person. I've done things like I've gave away watches. We bought shoes for kids who couldn't afford them.
Right.
You know, single parents. Lady works. She had 4 kids. She couldn't afford to feed the kids. So a bunch of us at Wilmington Police got together, bought her groceries, a TV, you know, some clothes for her kids and stuff like that. And then that evolves, that grows, because later on in life, the kids will come to you, or the parents will come to you,
Right.
which they've done so many times, and they're like, you remember me? It's like, yeah, you look familiar. Said, I'm telling my daughter was here, you're the officer that saved my life. You're the officer that started her off in school. You're the officer that came to our church and spoke.
You're
It's like,
really
yeah,
engaged
that's
with
me.
the community. Yeah, that is definitely you.
Yeah.
And Anthony, you touched my heart too when I did that ride along with you, because you're non-judgmental. You really are. You can shake a politician's hand, and then you can as easily talk to a veteran who has been forgotten about and is living at the YMCA.
Yeah.
That is big to me.
Well, the veterans at the YMCA, they got my heart. A lot of people do not understand them because of where they're located, and we had a situation where they were approaching the females at Capital One. So Chief Tracy wanted somebody to sit up there. So I'm not just going to sit up there and sit in a police car. I'm going to get out and I'm going to engage. And I found out that 90% of them were veterans.
Mm-hmm.
So we start talking and whatnot. And then when they were like, one veteran said, do you know what it is to be a veteran? I was like, well, yes, I do, sir. Yes, I do. I'm a United States Marine. And he was in the Marine Corps back in the day. And you just start the language as you use in the Marine Corps. And this guy actually came up and just gave me the biggest hug, and he started crying. And he said, I just need someone to tell me they love me. And I told him, I looked him in the face, grabbed him by his face and said, I love you, man. And, you know, I have no problems up there anymore whatsoever because you get to know everybody. John, James, Richard, Timothy, they look forward to seeing you, and you look forward to seeing them.
That's right. And making connections within the community. That's very valuable. And that's something that Herb Cunningham is actually doing too at Perfect Will Ministries.
He does a lot.
And then can you touch a little bit of basis on the importance? So Herb, you're the director of security there.
Correct, yes.
And one thing that I want to mention, and it's funny that even I thought about it, I said, you know what, some people might think, why do you have security at a church? You don't need that. But then I remembered the Charleston church shooting.
Correct.
And how 9 people died when they literally just woke up that morning to go and praise God and just be in their sanctuary spot. And then this massacre happened, this shooting happened, and it just was something that was not predicted.
Correct.
And nobody was prepared for it. And there was no security in sight. There was no police officer around the corner. So how important is it to have a security in such a setting that keeps the people safe?
It's very important. We have to take in consideration that the way we grew up, our grandparents, our parents, it was always gotta protect us, gotta protect us. But as you said earlier, that we're living in a society that doesn't view everything the same as some of the older generation did. I think a lot of times that we have to keep in mind that a church is a place where on the average Sunday, there's cash involved, exchanging hands. So that's attractive to someone who doesn't always necessarily have a, for better words to say, that they're not on the right path. I'm just looking for a quick cash, just looking for a quick something, a fix or something. So you have tendencies, or you have times where if you watch the news where someone maybe came in and they assaulted the pastor. Somebody might have came in because assaulted the pastor's wife because they were trying to get at the pastor, or assault another church member that may be going through a domestic violence or something like that. So if you have a safety measures in place and or security, you can kind of deter from it. We at Perfect Will, we do multiple trainings. We prepare ourselves for any and every circumstance that might come about. It's better to be prepared than not prepared. So hopefully, God forbid, we will ever have to use any force to detain someone, but we're prepared in case that comes across.
And that is an initiative that you guys are taking where you're helping other churches and other individuals here within the city of Wilmington. And that's what I like. It's not like you're just focused on one particular church or one particular faith. It's like, no, we got to help everyone in the community. Correct. Because this problem affects all of us. And that's very crucial.
Yes.
And so to talk a little bit more about Beyond the Badge, both of you guys are also affiliated, or I should say contributing to the Law Enforcement and Community Engagement Forum. So can you talk a little bit about that and your involvement within the forum?
My involvement in the forum is to engage any and everyone who has a question, a comment, or concern. Normally, I like to engage the youth because you can definitely change the mindset from their perception of what they see on YouTube or Instagram or Facebook. You engage and you listen. That's the biggest thing, is to listen. Once you listen and you dissect their dialogue of what their problem is, you come up with a solution, and then you have a positive outcome. That's what we do.
Okay, and Herb, your involvement too?
My involvement would be just to make sure everybody's in place, the staff that we have, to just to make sure from the time that they pull into the parking lot, each person makes it into the church safely, that everybody's in position just in case something was to get out of hand, which I'm sure it wasn't because my brother's going to be here. But just to make sure that we give everybody a sense of comfort once they enter the church.
And comfortability and engagement are two important words here. And one thing I did want to also touch on here, Anthony, is that you mentioned about the youth. Do you actually mentor too as well?
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. They didn't want me to mention their names, but
oh, that's okay. We don't have to do names.
I mentor actually 3 youth, and they come from homes that didn't have much. As a matter of fact, we gave some furniture to their mother yesterday, a dresser, a drawer, and a television that she needed to help. They were falling, walking out in the street, pants hanging down, and I just couldn't take that. So I stopped them and spoke with all three of them, and they were brothers. And they were like, "We don't have anything." I'm like, "Well, you got somebody now." And I just continued to stay with them. They've graduated from high school, and they're going to the greatest university in the United States of America. It's called Morgan State University, Cold Spring and Henry Road in Baltimore,
We
Maryland.
both went there.
Yes, we both went to Morgan State. And also there were two more young men, Miss Rotina, who works for the state,
Okay.
her son, and her nephew. And I remember she used to bring them down to the police department. Well, when I was in Mayor Williams' office as his bodyguard, she gave me a call, and we decided to have them come up, and we put them into the United States Marine Corps. They went through boot camp,
Wow.
and they both graduated. When they graduated, they came to the mayor's office with their dress blues on, and myself and Mr. Dwight Holden, who had put them both in, and they're doing well now. One is a sergeant, and one is a corporal, and one works in explosive ordnance disposal, and the other one is a air traffic controller.
That's
From Wilmington.
That's powerful.
From Wilmington.
You just answered my question. I was thinking to myself, how do you get the youth to think about being a police officer? Because with all the different types of shootings that's going on, that can kind of frighten them. Like, I don't know if I want to wear the badge and protect and serve because I myself might get shot. But here you're saying it's possible because this is a prime example of what you did by engaging with the youth.
Well, the perception of the street and what's inside the home is really different. When kids are out on the street, they have to hold up that perception of, I'm tough, and this and that. But when they get you alone, man, I want to be a police officer. Can you tell me the road to take? I'm taking criminal justice. I want to do this. I want to do that. There is a lot of interest in being a law enforcement officer. I tell them not just to be a Wilmington police officer, but how about Newcastle County? How about a Delaware State Trooper? You know, how about a Secret Service agent who I work with, United States Secret Service Wilmington office for the Biden detail, ICE, Immigrations, Customs, and Enforcement. There are many facets of law enforcement, and it opens their eyes because the way they look at you, it's like, one kid said, I only thought it was just Wilmington Police.
Wow.
No, it's not. You have many different facets in the law enforcement community. And you show them people are visual.
Yes.
So then the instance of the three young gentlemen, I took them to the Secret Service office, and they saw the pictures of the president being protected by the same guys that they were in the presence of. Take them to the police department, let them show them everything that goes on with SWAT, community policing, and it's like you open that door and that breath of fresh air comes through, and you would be surprised how many kids turn themselves around.
And that is very powerful. I mean, that eliminates the myth of people sometimes being scared to be a police officer, also because of like the tests you have to take and the psychological type of strength you have to have.
Yeah,
Not anybody can just be part of the force, but as you're saying, no, you can. You just have to be committed and pursue it. And then if you have someone like yourself who can kind of guide them and show them the way, it's even better.
Well, one of my greatest guides are my daughters. I have a 21-year-old and a 17-year-old. And a lot of people will tell me, like, man, you did a good job raising them girls. And I was like, no, my family did a good job. And when I'm talking about my family, I'm talking about my immediate family and my Wilmington Police, Delaware State Troopers, Newcastle County family. And the law enforcement community, if someone is in need, we give. And they've helped me raise my daughters to be who they are today. So it's a village effect.
It is, it truly is. And it's a constant theme that I hear with you, Master Corporal, because when we went on that ride along, yes, you have two daughters, but I also hear other people who live in the community say, that's my dad.
Yeah.
He also helped me, or that's my
Yes.
brother.
Yeah.
That's my uncle. Everyone's just shouting
Yeah.
out what image and what role you portrayed in their lives, and you had this profound effect, and you still do, on so many people in the community, also politicians too, and it's very unique, but also great to see, because you don't see that in a lot of different cities that you go to.
Well, when I grew up, my father was a master mason. My mom was in the Eastern Star. So when we didn't have much, they bought. So charity is a big thing. And that's where I come from, myself. And we give charity back to the people. It extends. It extends. Because when you're no longer here, people who mention your name will either say one or two things. Either he did nothing, or he did everything he could. And I want to be the one that they say that he did everything he could.
That's amazing.
Because it's not all about me, it's about us.
And that's something I was going to say too with Herb, because
Yeah.
a lot of people may not know his story, but he turned his whole life around as well.
Yes.
And he's a realtor now, but you can speak from the side of what it's like to be out in the streets and what
Yes.
these people are experiencing and exposed to, because if you don't know better, you won't do better.
Correct.
And you can actually relate to that, and you come from a place where everything wasn't given to you, and you've seen certain different things within the city, and then you just flipped it around, and now like you're helping people close on their first home.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about your story too as well?
My story, raised in Delaware, in Wilmington, pretty much single parent. My mother raised myself and my sister. Growing up, being an athlete, playing sports, doing good, it's kind of hard when you have to sit on the curb and wait for somebody else's parent to take you home because your parent is working. Didn't always have the best of everything, but had a roof over my head and clothes on my back and was happy. In high school, started to smell myself and started to stray away from the values that my mother instilled in me. Doing things that wouldn't make her necessarily happy, as far as running the streets, selling drugs. But it got to the point where one Sunday I was convicted, and the Lord told me to show me how to turn myself around. And at that point in time, I just completely stopped. Had my first son at 22. Now I'm married with 3 kids. But just the change itself, and to kind of look back to see where you came from, have run in with the police many times, and at the first forum where Anthony was in, one of the questions that I had was speaking from a place of in the streets where it was okay. The police want you to tell on somebody, because you mentioned it earlier about the snitching rule.
Right.
So how do I, and my question was, how do I entrust in the police to give information about snitching about somebody that I grew up with in the community, where I see police brutality and I don't see another police officer stopping or going to a superior officer and say, hey, this person was a little bit excessive. So you want me to snitch, but you guys don't want to snitch. So that, when he gave his answer, he gave the example when he seen another police officer not necessarily living up to the code, he pulled him to the side and said, hey, look, we're not going to do this anymore. So that was ensuring to hear a fellow officer say it, and to be willing to stand up, because in the streets, let's be completely honest, it's the streets against the police a lot of times. And the when you're in the streets, you have the mindset that they're not going to tell on each other. They're going to do what they want, because we hear it as the blue code, the shield from the streets, that they're not going to tell on each other, and we see it sometimes growing up. For me, growing up, and you don't necessarily see another officer pull somebody off back when I was younger, and as well as now as an adult, because you look at the different things that you see and again, we only see on one side of the story because we don't know the whole background of it. Right. But a lot of times we see officers that we feel that are excessive, but we don't know exactly what happened for them to get to that point. So a lot of times we have that mindset of how we were raised or what we heard growing up about police officers are bad. But the one thing that sticks out the most is when something goes wrong, who's the first person we call? Is the police.
That's right.
So.
And you did mention, like, as you're talking, I'm thinking about like the high-profile case of Philando Castile and how he was in a car with his child and his child's mother, and then boom, officer shoots him.
Right.
And then it was like a ripple effect, all these different types of things that you're seeing within every single state, and it's being highlighted on national TV, and it's just giving officers a bad rap.
Yes.
But like you're saying, you attend one of these community forums like the law enforcement and community engagement that's being held on August 22nd, and you get to see, witness, that's not every police officer.
Correct.
They might highlight one on all these national news stations, but they're not highlighting Master Corporal Anthony Easterling and others on the force that are like that are coming to these community forums from different type of departments, the state, Newcastle County, and they're sharing, like you're saying, that insight of, no, we're not all like that, and we will call our brothers out just like you would as well on the streets, and this is what it looks like. And that's very powerful to me. That's a powerful message that you're sending out as an officer and you're receiving as a resident of the community. That's big.
Yes. Yes.
So thank you for that in itself.
Oh, you're welcome.
Because we
Definitely
need
welcome.
more of that. You know, I was sharing with Frank Burton Jr. earlier how it starts from an early age for mostly minorities, where they have that fear already, even if it's just being pulled over because I ran a red light or a stop sign or my light's not working in the back. And it's like, you get this fear. So it already breaks up any type of connection that you can possibly have with them. And is there anything that you learn on the force that that kind of helps you reduce that fear?
Yes.
And I'm assuming community engagement is one of them.
Community engagement. The mission statement of the Wilmington Department of Police is to work in a true partnership with your fellow citizens and to raise the level of public safety through law enforcement, thereby reducing the fears and the incidences of crime. And every member of the department has to stand by that mission. If you practice that, it works. It works. You learn how to be compassionate. The greatest thing a police officer can do is listen. Okay? When you put this uniform on, when you put this vest on, this gun belt on, and you have a gun, and you have the power that is invested in you to take control or take someone's life, you really better think about it. Okay? It's all fun and games. It's all cool to become a police officer because it's something you wanted to see when you grow up. Okay? Once you put this uniform on and you realize the power you have to take away a person's life, that is a profound effect that will be with you forever.
That's right.
Forever.
And I'm glad you shared that with us,
And,
because some people think it's only one-sided when it's not. It
No.
affects the police officer as well.
But then on the other side, when a police officer's life is taken, personally, I've seen it, and it has affected me because I can no longer see my partner. Okay? And you just have to be able to listen to people, and people have to be able to listen to you. There's something that's going on now where if a police officer approaches somebody, they think that they can control the situation. No, absolutely not. Listen to each other. You will have a better outcome.
Man, that's interesting, because I remember you shared with me an incident that you had where you were talking to a gentleman and then you left his apartment, and the next thing you know, you heard a gunshot.
Yes.
And it's
Yeah.
and it's like you said, you
2412
gotta
Market Street.
you gotta take that moment to really listen. Did you want to say something?
Yeah,
as well,
I think
Herb?
that this forum is going to be beneficial for situations like that, because a lot of times we hear the youth say, "I know my rights," or you hear somebody say, "I know my rights. I know my rights." But this will give them a chance to have maybe an interaction. Say, "Okay, we're going to do a scenario. I'm sitting in a chair." To any of the police officers, what's the best way, or tell me what's the protocol that when I'm pulled over by a police officer? What if I say this, is this out of bounds? Is this out of bounds? Just to have a dialogue to find out exactly what I can say and what I shouldn't say, or what I should say where it's not disrespectful, or it's going to have me outside of the car, possibly being handcuffed or detained, because the ultimate goal is for everyone to be able to go home. The officer as well as the person that's being pulled over. So I think this is a good forum where we plan on having scenarios like that we can say, okay, well, somebody come up and maybe sit in his chair. Maybe not to necessarily be too combative, but just a little resistance, just to see how how it's played out on both sides. You know, because a lot of times, again, we hear all the time, I know my rights, but a lot of times we really don't know our rights.
And I was just going to say that education, information beats all of that, assumptions and things like that.
You said it, education and information. There's a book in the state of Delaware that's called the Delaware Criminal Code. It's available to anybody. It's the laws that the people vote for in the state of Delaware when it comes to criminal justice. Get a free copy, read it.
Yeah, because I was going to say, like you mentioned earlier, YouTube. I mean, with everything that's going on nationally, on a national spectrum, people are just looking up videos on YouTube. They're seeing videos of that other people are posting. Oh, well, I don't have to technically put my window all the way down when an officer comes to me to try to ask me or for my identification.
Right.
And so they're basing their laws off of what they're seeing on media and social media platforms. When, like you said, that's not true. There's a book out there that actually has it, and each state has their laws that you abide by.
Right.
And it's just as simple as, like you said, being educated at a forum where you get to sit with the law. And so any misconstrued or anything that's assumed within the community is your opportunity to ask the law itself.
Correct.
Because you might not have time to read a book, or you might not be able to read a book because you're not there yet in your life, but you have the person where you can ask them straight to their face. Can I do this? Can I not do that? And that's what this community forum is all about. And so it's going to be on August 22nd.
Yes.
It's going to be at the Will Perfect Ministries. And before we go, can you share with me your whys? Because you technically don't have to go beyond your badge and attend one of these community forums and really be a voice of the police department. And you don't have to be there as a security person or as a person who lives within the city of Wilmington to allow people to know that it's okay to, you know, be informed and ask questions. So what is your why? Because not everyone is doing what you're doing.
My why is because it's the way I was raised. Come from a large family, and my mother always said, be involved. So I'm going to be involved.
Okay.
That's why.
My why is just to educate the community, because I would love to see every child to be able to make it home every day. And a lot of times, because we're not educated enough, or we think we know everything when we hardly know anything, it prevents us from getting to our destination, that's to make it home safely every night.
And what could the both of you share, one as a resident and one as a police officer, to those who may be watching and might be skeptical to actually attend this forum? Because like you said, I'm not going to be a snitch. I don't want to be associated with blue, with the law enforcement, and I just don't think this is going to work. So what can you say to those who are watching so that way this is a forum that continues every year?
Come out. Talk to me. Look me in the eye. Come right up to me, and I'll talk to you. There's a short saying that either you're too blue for the brothers or you're too black for the badge.
Wow.
Okay, that's a strong statement.
Steve,
And in the community in which I serve, I get that sometimes, but when we dialogue with people, totally changes. So come on out to the forum. Ask me your questions. I'll give you my answers.
Thank you, Master Corporal
You're
Easterling.
so very welcome.
Mine would be, could a blind person talk about not looking anymore, to seeing anymore? So why let somebody who's skeptical stop you from getting home every day? Because a lot of times it's the wrong information that we're receiving from the media. We're looking at it one-sided. So if we look at it from an open aspect, or open our eyes to see and get both sides of the story, then we can make it home safe.
Thank you so much, gentlemen, for your time.
Oh, you're
Very
welcome.
powerful
Thank you for
segment, very
inviting me.
powerful.
Thank you.
Our
Thank you.
pleasure. And on behalf of all of us here at WITN 22, I'm your host, Yesenia Taveras, and we would like to thank you for watching this episode of In Focus.